Well, our next guest is a former Navy SEAL. He started out as a Russian language major, became a naval officer, and then a Navy SEAL. He was part of the detachment to Beirut, Lebanon in 1983. He was also a special warfare officer. Now he has skills as a boat builder, welder, charter boat skipper. This is a guy who is going to survive the next crisis, but he sees it coming, and he has some very compelling, very realistic, very entertaining books, a trilogy of books, and I'm going to let him tell you about those books. Our guest, Matt Bracken. Welcome to the program, Matt. I want to go over your different books here. You're going back to 2003. You've got a trilogy, essentially Enemies, Foreign and Domestic. You've got Foreign Enemies and Traitors, book number 3 that came out in 2009. They came out about every 3 years. Where did you get the crazy ideas for these false flags and patsies and government agencies out of control?
Well, I was always interested in political intrigue. I went into the Navy. I thought I'd wind up in intelligence. I was a Russian studies major in college. And actually, I wound up being a Navy frogman, an officer in the SEAL teams. And right about the time that I was in was when SEAL Team 6 was being created out the backyard across the lot of SEAL Team 2.
Hmm.
So I was around at the genesis of one of these, super duper secret teams. And it didn't surprise me when the whole thing went corrupt. I sort of was tipped off then, as if I didn't know already, that when you have groups, elite groups of very gung-ho guys, mainly guys, they're chomping at the bit to do all kind of, cutting-edge tactical work. And they're the most proud when they're brought into a secret conspiracy, requiring only the utmost, most loyal officers and men, the ones that can really keep their mouths shut. And I just started studying this phenomenon more and more, and it seemed to almost be an ironclad rule that the more secret an organization, the more it will be abused.
Yes, and when you talk about that, I think that's a real important motivating factor. I think we really ought to focus on that because I'm seeing that government now at every level is falling under that kind of, do this for us. This is very important. When we go down and talk to the most mundane government agencies and try to get information from their public information officers, they're acting as if they're the CIA because they're all on some kind of a special, super secret, important mission. That's a motivating factor that they're doing to everybody in government now, isn't it?
They've clearly, since I wrote the book in 2003, they've clearly blurred the line from a foreign war or a domestic war. I think that right now the White House and the Department of Homeland Security, well, they, by their own words, they're much more concerned about, right-wing, mainly white extremists than they are about Al-Qaeda or ISIS or Hamas or Hezbollah. But the main thing is to understand is that whereas we were formally warned by Eisenhower and others to beware of the military-industrial complex, now what we have is a military intelligence and law enforcement complex, which is big bucks, private prisons, SWAT teams with multi-million-dollar budgets that need to be used to justify their budget. I mean, we're sending snipers to get the cat out of the tree these days.
Absolutely. Now, I haven't read your books, but it got my attention when I saw a book review from John Ross. And his book, a lot of people might know, Unintended Consequences, is one I did read about 20 years or so ago. As a matter of fact, I just sold a hard copy cover for a couple $100 used because it's now rare. You can get it in a paperback. But the kind of reviews that I'm seeing hundreds of reviews, people saying that it's really well-written page turner, that it's very realistic, that the villains are interesting. They're not just cardboard cutout characters. But the most interesting thing, I think, and what our readers would be interested in is the fact that going back to 2003, you've got a scenario here that involves false flags, patsies, engineered crises, other opportunities to expand government. And it starts out with a false flag attack around an NFL stadium. I mean, that's the kind of thing that we see them prepping for right now. We even see that in the recent Batman movie.
Yeah, that's the first book. It starts on the first page with a false flag sniper attack into a stadium where 3 magazines, 90 rounds precipitates a panic stampede with people being pushed off the upper decks and, stampeded in the tunnels, leading to, as a plot device, basically to speed up years and years of slow politics, leading to a ban on all semi-automatic rifles. the clique of people that actually pull the operation, they understand that nobody's going to turn their rifles in, but it will give them justification to go house to house, which will require a budget like the 82nd Airborne and armament. You know, so
Yeah.
it's a way of building an empire in this military intelligence law enforcement complex we now have in this country.
Now, one of the things that John Ross said, he says it's a challenge for any writer to come up with a plot that is at once plausible enough to have the reader accept it, but also unlikely enough that it hasn't actually happened yet in real life. But we've seen it come very close to that. And as we've reported on many of these highly publicized crises and shootings, that we believe that it's come very close to that happening. Now, in this first book, you're talking about enemies, foreign and domestic. In the second one, you're talking about a border collapse and
Right.
Atslin. Talk about that scenario for us.
Yeah, I was living out in San Diego. That's this book, Domestic Enemies. I was living out in San Diego during the early 2000s when I began to cast about a theme for this book. And I was really intrigued to discover that not only are there groups that we've heard of, like La Raza and LULAC, there are groups like MECHA, which is the student movement for Aztlan, and the Brown Berets of Aztlan. These are extremely radical, generally Marxist, international socialist groups, but they truly believe that they're going to take the Southwest, not necessarily to give it back to the government of Mexico City, but certainly to remove it from American control. And they're very serious.
Oh, yeah.
Now they've been in colleges teaching this for 3, 4 or decades now. Today we're seeing the results of it. The previous mayor of Los Angeles, he was a college radical for Aztlan and other socialist causes. What was his name? Villa Rigosa. Um, but judges and attorney generals across, especially across the Southwest, they're infused in this mentality. So we're not going to get a lot of help stopping this invasion when you consider that so much of the bureaucracy is now supporting the invasion,
Oh,
both
yeah,
at the federal
absolutely.
level and at the state level.
They want to see this happen. Quite
Right.
clearly, they want to see this happening. The Border Patrol agents know what's going on. They're very upset with it. And as we hear, Matt, all the
Absolutely.
time, they're trying to portray this as if this is defending children, when even by their own
Right.
statistics, they say at a very max, it's 20% that are children. And that would include people up to the age of 18. Many of those
Well,
coming in, of course, are drug gang members.
and then that 18 is a matter of self-reporting. They have no
Mm-hmm.
ID. They
Mm-hmm.
say, "My name is Juan Rivera. I'm from Guatemala, and I'm 18." The guy could be 24.
Yes.
I mean, how do
Yes.
you know? You got a skinny bantamweight Latino who's not too beat up, could easily claim to be a teenager. There have been reports of men in their late 20s trying to get into high school. I
Yeah.
guess it would, easy way to score the chicks or something. I don't know, or
And yet,
open up a new drug pipeline.
that's right. And yet we hear people like
Mark.
George Will saying, these are 8-year-old criminals with their teddy bears. Shame on you for wanting to send them back. I mean, that's what they're doing. They clearly do
George
want
Will.
another crisis.
George Will needs a little gang of MS-13 living at his house. They'll appreciate him. But the border, anybody should take a look at pictures of the actual border. What people don't understand is the average farmer has a better fence between two cow fields.
Yeah.
There is often no fence.
Yes.
Only when they take politicians to El Paso or San Diego do you see a fence in the background.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine a dangerous quarry or swimming pool where children have drowned, and there's only a great fence around 10% of it. And that's where they use a camera backdrop and say, we don't understand why kids continue to drown in the pool.
Oh, absolutely.
But we have an unguarded border. The Border Patrol, because the border is unguarded, have to defend way in depth, 40, 50 miles back, which does several unintended bad consequences. It turns the interior of Texas and the Southwest into a war zone where actual Americans have to go through Border Patrol checkpoints, between McDonald's and work. That pisses off regular Americans, excuse me.
Yeah.
But also it allows the cartels to actually run the border zone.
Yes.
Safe houses, drop sites, all of this is completely open and free, while the children that Obama deliberately lured in like the Pied Piper, the children are actually a sympathetic shield or mask on the front of a Trojan horse.
Yes.
While the mainstream media, the liberal mainstream media, swings the cameras around to George Will's 8-year-old with a teddy bear. Right behind the camera are all these tattooed gang members that are saying "Gracias, Presidente Obama." I mean, the Border Patrol agent that was killed a couple days ago in his house, not on the job, by two grown career illegal aliens. These guys had been deported each multiple times, came back in, murdered an American Border Patrol, but he could have been any American. But the point is, these children can come across. If children can hoof it across the border,
Yes.
then for goodness sakes, everybody in the world can hoof it across our border, and they are.
So you followed that up with another series in 2009, another book, part of the same trilogy, Foreign Enemies and Traitors. Tell us a little bit about that scenario.
Well, this book kicks off as a plot device. The New Madrid Fault had already broken loose, so all of the bridges on the Mississippi, the Ohio, all of these main bridges have all collapsed between Memphis and Nashville and Arkansas, all over that region. The federal government's too broke to fix it. It's much too big of a problem. It's Katrina times 100, and the South goes one way. It's sort of a plot device for dividing the country regionally. The Northeast and the Rust Belt is still heavily socialist and under the control of Washington, but the rest of the country is saying, we don't think we are going to follow the instructions of Washington, D.C. anymore. That's the setup for that. And in that middle region, the worst affected by the New Madrid earthquake, the federal government discovers that they can't send United States soldiers to shoot other Americans to enforce evacuations of entire counties and regions. Basically, Western Tennessee, between all the rivers, is cut off, and it's starving and out of water. But they don't want help, and they don't want to go to a FEMA camp. They just want to stay and try to go Amish and hang on. They're afraid that once they go on any kind of a government bus, they may never come back. Well, Americans won't fire on them to enforce these evacuation orders. So President Jamal Tambor invites in UN peacekeepers who are actually intact battalions from Nigeria or the Balkans that are willing to basically come over as mercenaries, with their expected pay being in American citizenship and land out west, after they've defeated the rebellious Tennesseans who will not submit to evacuation.
Well, Matt, we don't have much time left. You're obviously wide awake as somebody who's a Navy SEAL who has anticipated a lot of these scenarios, who's spoken out about the sorts of things that we have seen happen over and over again throughout history, that we see the government trying to pull out again. What do you see? What are your concerns about the near future? What would you recommend for people to do real quickly in just a couple of minutes that we've got?
Well, I think everybody should try to have a water source. Imagine the power going out and not coming back on. I would recommend folks read my short story that just Google. It's floating around the internet. The short story called "Alas, Brave New Babylon." But I'm afraid that we're living in a dynamite factory, and there's about a dozen fuses leading into it. It could be a cyber attack. It could be a solar ejecta from the sun. It could be a war with China, but on a computer level. It could be a computer virus that gets out of control.
It could be a real virus that gets out of control.
Could be a real virus. Yeah. But anything that shuts down the banking system will shut down the computer system, will shut down the electrical system. And we're in a very vulnerable situation where if the entire country went Katrina and there was no cavalry coming, things would spin out of control in just a matter of weeks. And folks can go to my website, enemiesforeignanddomestic.com. And on my links page, there are a bunch of my short stuff that are just floating around the internet, both fiction and nonfiction. But I recommend folks read like Dear Mr. Security Agent, which is sort of an open letter to federal law enforcement. Some of my fiction, besides Alas, Brave New Babylon, Professor Raoul X, What I Saw at the Coup. These are what I'm seeing as potential scenarios that could be playing out.
Well, I can't wait to read some of your stuff. I'm sorry I've missed it so far. As everybody is saying on the internet, it's the real page turner. It's got hundreds of interviews, and most of them 4- and 5-star interviews. Most of them 5-star reviews, rather, I should say. Thank you for joining us tonight, and thank you for telling us what's really going on. We need to see these fictional sources because a lot of people just won't take the time to connect the dots out of the news.
Ask yourselves, what are you doing in this time of great challenge? What are you doing to unlock minds?